Amen. All right, so we are continuing this sermon series called The Serving Challenge, where we are here to serve like Jesus. But what the big thing is, it's kind of like last year. There's a lot of people here for a baptism, I hear, like all that stuff. That last year we did this thing called the Forgiving Challenge. And yes, it's to forgive like Jesus, but what we see in that is that we are truly forgiven. In this one, yes, it's to serve like Jesus, but it also sees that Jesus serves us. And this whole sermon series is built off of this old Christian song, this old Christian hymn that's found in Philippians chapter 2. And we're building this entire series off of that one song. And so we got a few more weeks left in this. Last week we talked about attitude. This week, you can tell because it's underlined. We're talking about being availability, and then actionability and ambition. And what we have seen in this is that the attitude was from Philippians chapter 2, verse 5, that in your relationships with one another, and that's all of us, that's everyone in here, that's also when you go to the restaurant later, that's also when you're in the checkout line, and that's going a little slower than you would like, or that one person doesn't hit the go pedal on their car a little quick enough when the light turns green. It's like, stop texting, right? And like all these things, it's even the people that you disagree with, the people that you may have trouble loving, right? Like all that in your relationships with one another, have the same mindset, attitude, have the same attitude as Christ Jesus, right? Like we keep on going there. Then it goes into today, being available. Jesus, being in the very nature God, didn't consider equality with God something to be used to his own advantage. Other English translations say, did not consider equality with God something that he had to try to grasp to, try to think like it's something that he's trying to get. It's like, I need to feel important about myself and all that stuff. He's like, no, he didn't do any of that. He didn't try to be like, I'm Jesus, I'm on the heavenly realms, and I'm just quietly judging everyone. You to the good place, you to the bad place. You made me sad, Like that's and like shooting like lightning out of his fingertips at people when his wrath is due, right? Like all that. Like Jesus isn't Zeus, all right? He's not a Greek god. He doesn't shoot lightning out of his fingertips, right? Like he's the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And we see this very interesting thing going through him. Like, so rather than trying to lift himself up onto these places of judgment over one, instead, he makes himself nothing. Just like Titus is then, right? Like that. like the poor little guy, he fell down right there. That's what that was. But it was, Jesus made himself nothing. And I got to be honest, there's some stuff that we're talking about today that I kind of struggle with, and you might too. Before we get into that, we got to talk about Bruce Almighty. Have you guys seen Bruce Almighty? Like that? It's a pretty good movie. This movie's getting strangely old, and I don't know how to feel about it, because like we had Michael, who's like 25 years old. He was like 2 when this movie came out. Like that. You remember when this came out, don't you, Nicole? Yeah, I was uncomfortable about it too. Like all these things. So if you haven't seen Bruce Almighty, it's a Jim Carrey movie. If you can't read the top of the slide there, but and he plays this guy named Bruce, and his life is just going just terrible, and he has one of those. I'll call it like a Psalms moment, because most of the Psalms are just the Psalm writers like shaking their fist at God. Like, why, God, why? Like, why is this like this? And he has one of those moments. He's like, God, I could run this so much better than you. And God, played by Morgan Freeman, he's like, oh, really? That's fine. Here, you can be in charge of things. And so he's like, oh, and he has all these great godly powers over him. My favorite power that he displays is he's having tomato soup one day, and he divides the Red Sea. Solid joke in the movie. Like that's it's like I really like that, and he's really enjoying all these powers he's having, and then all of a sudden he wakes up one morning and all he hears is voices in his head. All these voices coming at him, all these voices coming from all these different places, and he just can't concentrate on anything. And he realizes that they're all prayers. They're all prayers coming in. And he's like, oh, I got to organize these in a different way. He goes, I know what, like, let's have all the prayers in Post-it notes, right? And so then that's the scene there, like over there. And that doesn't work. He's like, this is ridiculous. We can't be doing prayers on Post-it notes. And he gets an idea. He's like, oh, we will do email. We'll do email. I'll make it go all to my Gmail account. It'll be great, right? It's like prayers 1256 at gmail.com, and it'll be all good. All they'll come to prayers. And he looks at all the prayers, and it's like 1 million prayers have come in, and he uses his godly power to like quickly hammer them all out, and he does them in like 30 minutes, all these prayers. And he's like, that's a good job there, and he clicks refresh, and then like 5 million come in. And he's like, oh, I'm too important for all of this, right? This is a waste of my time. I can't do all these things. I can't handle it. And so for those of you who've seen the movie, does anyone remember what he does? He says yes to all of them. Control A, yes, right? Like over there, and that solves all of his issues, right? Like no, everything falls apart because everybody wins the lottery. Everybody's lights turn green. Like in all of this stuff, like it just goes, and everyone ends up getting angry at themselves, right? Like that's and that's kind of the whole point about this, is that a lot of times we think like that God is this God that is outside just answering prayers, that is somewhere else on the holy Google domain and answering everybody's prayers somewhere else. But the story that we're talking about today in Mark chapter 5 talks about a God that is close and stops, that he's not too busy to stop, because if there's anyone busy, it's God, and he's not too busy to stop and be with us. So this story in Mark chapter 5, I normally teach this story as part of a greater whole. The story that Jesus starts with talking about the different soils, that there's all these different soils that seeds get planted in, and all these things like that. And then Jesus comes and he calms the storm. And then Jesus goes into this Gentile area, right? Like, oh my goodness, this Gentile area. And in that Gentile area, he frees this man from a legion of demons. Like a legion of demons. And then Jesus comes back over, and everyone's like, have you heard about Jesus? Have you heard about all this stuff? Like he's all of a sudden famous, and everyone's like, this is probably the Messiah. This is probably the one that's going to come and save us. This is going to be him. It's going to be amazing. And they're really just going at it and going at it and going at it. And all these people are just pressing in on him as he's just trying to walk around. And then suddenly a synagogue leader named Jairus comes up, and when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet. This is profoundly weird, because remember, the religious leaders in Jesus' day have one mission, and they're trying to uphold it. Do you remember what that mission was? Kill Jesus, right? Like it's, I don't like this Jesus. I don't need him. Like it's over there. He's trying to take our power away. I don't like any of that. Like they're trying to get rid of Jesus. And suddenly, this guy shows up. What did this guy have to do in his life? Because we find out that he pleads earnestly, my little daughter is dying. Please come and put your hands on her so she'll be healed and live. What is this guy going through? What kind of public disgrace is this guy going through to have to be here with Jesus? What doctors have they seen? What lengths did they have to go that this guy is willing to come here? And think about if you are the disciples. You're like, oh my goodness, here we go. Like if Jesus can really get this synagogue leader, this religious leader, these guys hate Jesus. If they can get him to if we get Jesus to heal his daughter, maybe then the religious leaders can join with all the normal people together, and we can together lift Jesus up on high onto the Messiah's throne in the city, in Jerusalem, and like, oh, glory be, right? Like that's, and everyone's lifting everything up. There's a lot riding on Jesus, on this going well. So Jesus is like, okay, yeah, let's go. And so they're walking along there, and everyone's pushing in around Jesus, and they're all rushing, and they're just all busy. But then this older woman also sees Jesus coming. And she's had an issue for what it says is 12 years. Now, 12 is an interesting number in the Bible. 12, you have like 12 tribes of Israel, 12 disciples. 12 has this idea in the Bible of kind of being complete in all, right? Like that's all this stuff. So like all the years that she has been facing this bleeding, it's been her time of the month for 12 full years nonstop. And that is a profound inconvenience. But it's so much worse for her because she lives in a time where the law of Moses said that when you are bleeding in that way, that you cannot worship God. You cannot go to the temple. If you have a husband, even if he touches you, he also becomes ceremonially unclean. Think about that. Like, you cannot be with God, with your husband, with anybody. You can't be touched by anyone because you can't touch anyone. It's like the old kids thing, like cooties, right? Like you can't touch any of that. You can't be around there at all. And she sees Jesus coming, and she thinks of an old idea from an old prophet, from their old prophetic books. She's like, if I can just touch the fringe of his cloak, this guy's the Messiah, if I can just sneak in there and I can get healing in his wings, just the wings on the edge, like just touch the edge of my stole, like those things, like I just get healing in all of those things. If I could just touch them, then I too could leap like calves from the stalls. Right? Like she's over there. So she like sneaks in there. Imagine like everyone pushing in. If they had known, how would they have treated her? It's like, I'm ceremonially unclean now, Like over there, she's just trying to get in, get out. It's like a reconnaissance mission. And she's just getting in there, and she's over there, and she goes to touch him. If I can just be close enough. How much money has she spent to get better? Did she get into the Young Life oils? I'm not looking at anyone if you're into that. Like all the non-traditional medicine, all the things, all the different medications and all that stuff. Like she's probably tried it all, doesn't maybe have a penny to her name anymore. She's like, my only hope is if I can just sneak up there and get healing in his wings. Right? Mark is actually quoting that because she thought if I can just touch his clothes, that's the same. He's quoting that Malachi verse. There, then I will be healed. And immediately, just by grazing, just like fingertips on the edge of fabric, immediately her bleeding stopped. And she felt in her body that she was, and I love how the NIV translation renders this from the Greek, that she was freed from her suffering, right? Like that's good, right? Like, yeah, I like the people that you brought. They talk like that. That's like that's, and so like he's freed from her suffering, like, and she goes around like she's pressed all through those things. But also remember the stakes that's going on here. Like Jesus is going to heal another girl. Like time is of the essence. He's got to get there. I mean, this is the synagogue leader. If he can heal the synagogue leader's daughter, perhaps they won't hate Jesus anymore. But remember, Jesus doesn't see that grandiose vision. Jesus didn't consider equality with God something to be attained, something to grasp for, something to use to his own advantage. But rather, he makes himself nothing. He stops And it's a little weird how he stops. Then the woman, knowing what had happened to her, came, oh, no, I'm reading too early. At once, Jesus realized that power had gone out of him and turned around to the crowd and was like, who touched my clothes? Like, and you know his disciples are like, everybody has touched your clothes, Jesus. Take it easy, man. Like that's, like, what do you mean? Who's, like, we all have, I have. Look, I'm touching you now. Like you got a problem with it? People have been touching it for the last 2 hours. And now you're getting off to it. Like take it easy, right? Take it easy. And he's like, no, like, who touched me? And Jesus kept on looking around to see who had done it. Like, don't you see that I'm busy? Like think about, like, Jesus kind of comes off with, like, almost kind of aggressive, and it's like, oh no, what had happened, right? Like, can't you see I'm busy? Can't you see that, a lot is riding on this healing with this little girl? But Jesus doesn't say any of that. The woman, knowing what had happened to her, came and fell at his feet, and trembling with fear, told him the whole truth. And he says, daughter, your faith has healed you, right? Notice how he says daughter. Remember, she was bleeding for 12 years. Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace. Be freed from your sufferings. That's all Exodus language, by the way. We talked about Exodus language right up here a second ago. Like that, be freed from your suffering. Like notice what he stops. He stops. Even though all this busyness and all the people going around, he stops, becomes available. And he doesn't, it's not just good enough that she touches just the winds in his wings, right? Not just that, but he turns around, stops, and restores her. That's key. It's not just about the healing, but it's about God, the creator of everything, now made flesh, standing among us, stopping and restoring her. He's not just some distant God, right? But being in the nature of God, he didn't consider that equality with God something to be used to his own advantage, something to grasp for. Rather, he made himself nothing. He stops. He makes himself available. When I think about the equality with God, that's something that I am often struggling for, equality with God. Again, I make the jokes. I'm the one wearing the white robe. Anyone? Well, the girls had white dresses on today. They're trying. They're trying to keep up, right? I'm wearing the white robe. I'm two steps above everyone else. I'm the one that's standing, right? Like that's, I mean, even Titus fell down, right, right down over there. They're not in here right now. like that's, I try to and when I look at my trying godliness, oh, there he is. Hey, buddy, like that's when I'm thinking about my godliness and my importance, there's something that I think is incredibly important. My time, my schedule, it's how I find value. And it's a great source of my identity. Do you know what a power, I think you guys all know this, but what a power trip it is to be able to say to someone, I'm sorry, I'm too busy. Right? There's a certain amount of value and self-worth when we can say these things. I've got to get to the synagogue leader's house and heal this girl. It's a matter of life and death. That is how important I am, right? And it's so easy for me to see people, here, hold on, I got to say this without looking at any of you, to see people as a distraction to what's preventing me to do what's really important. Or to quote Philippians, trying to grasp to be God. So many of you know what I did when my church was before this. For those of you who don't know, my previous church, this is 8 years ago now I've been here. The previous church was in Bentonville, Arkansas. And you think Arkansas, it's like, oh yeah, you're dealing with like people that live in the woods or something like that. Like, no. Very corporate. It's Walmart's home office, Tyson Chicken, JB Hunt Shipping, University of Arkansas. That's where I was. And it was extremely corporate congregation, and I was constantly talking to people about how to, like, don't give your life and all to your job, right? Like that. Have ideas outside of that. Get your fulfillment from outside of that, right? And I'm saying all this while struggling with exactly the same thing, right? How many people came this last Sunday? Oh, that's great. We're beating our averages. You know, we're doing all these things. But then 8 years ago, I came here, and at the time when I came here, all retirees except for like 2 of you. Retirees as far as the eyes can see. I'm surprised there weren't golf carts in the parking lot, right? like that. That's like there's just all these things going over there, and I realized it was all the same problem. It was just 30 years down the road. That it was all these people that worked and worked and worked, and they're like, I will finally rest when I retire. But now that they're retired, they lost the thing that gave them identity. And they don't know what to do with themselves. And so they're just trying, like, aimlessly in the dark, trying to find identity in something else. It's all because we love this busyness and how it makes us important. Yet Jesus, in this hecticness of everyone pushing around, stopped. And we know what that busyness does to us, right? My blood pressure isn't any better because I'm busy. You know, all our doctors, every time we go to an appointment, they're like, you need to settle down, right? Go take a walk, you know? Go maybe swim some or do something else, like all that stuff. And we see the stress and the busyness of that life, where when we lose our identity in all these things, we try to grasp it by other things. And what we end up doing, our doctors are telling us, is we're just digging our own graves, right? We're just like looking for it. We're trying to look for notoriety, importance. We're just digging deeper and deeper and deeper our own graves, looking for notoriety. We end up just finding ourselves in the midst of nothingness, in the midst of burnout and hurt and frustration and not knowing where things are. But Jesus stops and makes himself nothing. And he meets us in the midst of our own pits, of our own despair and nothingness that we dug for ourselves. He meets us there, and he looks at each one of us and goes, little girl, sorry guys, he calls you little girls. Little girl, I say to you, arise. Meet you in the midst of all that is holding you back. Going into that room in there, it says, little girl, I say to you, get up. And I love this story because so often we think about the Easter story in the Gospels. It's like, oh yeah, that's the time where the resurrection is. But that's not how God created this world. Constantly we are seeing the resurrection force of God is constantly working in the world. Jesus even says, he's like, do you notice how a seed, when it goes in the ground, dies and then rises again, right? Like he says, like this was what's happening over and over again, bringing new life to each one of us, that we find ourselves in those pits of nothingness, yet Jesus meets us in that and says, arise, come out of it. Here, eat something. That's what he says. Here, eat something. The beautiful part about this whole story of Jesus and how he makes himself available, that if God made himself nothing and could raise the dead from there, then he could take care of the nothing in your own life. He could take care of it then. He rises to give us life and meaning in his name and love. So Jesus is available. He's available for each one of us. Meets us in our own despair, meets us in our own deaths even, to rise it out, to rise us out of that. Jesus serves you. And maybe, just maybe, might have an attitude like that. What did he say? Oh. I was done, Jacob. But we need a lesson in availability here. like that's but yeah. Maybe that can turn our hearts too. And I think that's good news. And we'll end right there. Please rise for a prayer in our next song. May God bless and keep you, that you would bless Jacob especially. Yeah, he needs all of it he can get, right? Oh, he's loving this attention right now. But may God bless and keep all of us in our schedules and how they can become so hectic. And may that hecticness that you see, that Jesus meets you there and he stops and he's with you. So have peace in his name. Amen. We'll see you in our next song.